However, there is an alternative route that we could take, and I'm not going to shy away from mentioning it to you tonight because I'm very interested to know what people think about this. And that is that now that we know the genes that are involved in the process, a more direct way of breeding crops, good crops, crops that already have really good attributes, and giving them just that extra trait of making the lignin easy to extract would be to use genetic modification. This is much easier in many ways than taking two parent barley and crossing them together and then hoping to get the best of both of the parents and the progeny. I mean, any of us who have kids know how difficult that is. They often seem to end up with our worst characters instead of our best. So that can be really quite unpredictable, and it actually takes quite a lot of effort for a breeder to breed on from that original cross to try and come up with a new variety that has all the best traits of the two parents. If we know that there's one or two specific genes that we'd like to manipulate in order to just change, just tweak the extractability of lignin in a plant, we could use a genetic modification approach. Now, I know a lot of people are not happy about that, and we can talk about that in a minute, but just to show you how feasible it is, and to show you that plants aren't going to fall over when you do that, I've brought along 3 samples of wood for you. Now, this wood is really very unique. This wood comes from a field trial of genetically modified poplars that was grown down in Bracknell many, many years ago now, when I still worked for Syngenta, so back in the 1990s. And these are 4-year-old trees, bits of trunk from 4-year-old trees, and in here I have one that's wild type, one that's not been modified, and 2 that have been modified by changing a specific gene, 2 specific genes in fact, in lignin biosynthesis. And I'm going to pass them around, and I defy you to tell me which is which, okay? You'll see that all 3 of them are equally tough and strong. They look almost exactly the same, and I don't think you're going to be able to tell one from the other, I don't know. So we really can use genetic modification. I should have said, of course, that we've analysed the lignin in this wood, and it is very different in the 2 that have been genetically modified. So the structure of the lignin is changed, and in one case it's been changed in a useful way that makes it much easier to extract the lignin out in a pulping process after the wood has been harvested. In the other case, it actually hasn't made it easier, it's made it more difficult to pulp. But I don't think you're going to be able to tell any of that by looking at the different wood samples. So there is a potential for us to use genetic modification to try to improve crops or other kinds of feedstocks for bioenergy applications. In the case of our major crops, it's maybe not so important because we have good breeding strategies anyway, good molecular breeding strategies. But if, for example, you wanted to work with a tree, it's not going to be so easy to go through rounds and rounds of breeding to improve that. Or if you wanted to work with some of these potential bioenergy perennial crops like miscanthus, for which we don't really have the same genetic resources, a genetic modification approach might be a much easier way of doing it. So I'm not suggesting that this is what we have to do. It's not what my research is concerned with. My research is much more concerned with the fundamentals of understanding how the plant puts lignin together. But it is something that you read about if you read about second generation biofuels, because many people think it's a big area for potential in the future.